The City of Angels now looking like hell, and we're only a few months into Trump's second term.
It's a surreal sight. This Black Hawk moved in just in the last few minutes from the Border Patrol.
So I'm going to break this video down into three parts: how it got started, what the repercussions are, and the absolute contradictions coming out of Trump. This all started Friday, June 6th with immigration raids across LA, with frankly scenes out of the Twilight Zone or Black Mirror with people being taken away in unmarked cars. Crowds gathered, but also people started trying to stop the cars. And this will become important later because remember, it's about migration, and I'm going to link it back to Trump, his family, and family history. Crowds gathered outside what they thought were buildings where people were being detained by ICE, and ICE have claimed that they arrested about 118 people that day. By Saturday, Sunday, skirmishes had started to break out outside the ICE center.
And law enforcement. Now, this video here from News Chopper 4 is as it flew over the federal building last night on Alameda, and you can see there dozens of agents coming out of the building to disperse crowds in downtown. At one point, they fired pepper balls and flash grenades to push back protesters. Now, the LAPD declared an unlawful assembly and moved the demonstrators off the streets. Our McCullough Medina was on scene last night speaking with those demonstrators.
Are you concerned at all about what's happening here, how they're responding to you guys?
I'm concerned because honestly, like, we're peacefully purchasing, you know? We're not throwing anything. We're not causing any damage, anything. I mean, there is graffiti, right? But at the end of the day, the damage was more cost to us than we cost to them.
They have all the guns. We know they have all the guns. We gotta let people know that we have a right to speak up. We're supposedly in a democracy and have a voice.
And those voices were angry.
Because an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And Los Angeles does not back down for that kind of fight.
Continue fighting until we reconstruct every single institution from the ground up so that we can grant full amnesty for all immigrants. Demand full compensation for all of the victims of this criminal injustice system.
What's going to change this is organizing, and not just any type of organizing, militant organizing.
And for Trump, this was absolute gold after the shit show that he experienced last week with Elon Musk and the fallout and the criticism and the Epstein files. I'm in no doubt that this was an opportunity he saw to change the news cycle and refocus on one of his key policies: migration. And if you want to see my video on the timeline of the civil war between Musk and Trump, I'll leave links at the end and in the description. So what does he do? He starts calling in the National Guard without the permission of the state governor.
Demonstrators erupted across LA, tensions reaching a boiling point, and now National Guard members are here in Southern California. And President Donald Trump has said that Marines could also be called in. This is the new video coming in from overnight showing the California National Guard arriving to the detention center in downtown LA. The Trump administration saying the deployment is in response to the protests that began Friday night over immigration enforcement operations that have resulted in clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement.
Did that de-escalate the situation? Of course not. It inflamed it, because generally in history, you don't send in the military to deal with a civil problem. You don't send in the military to take out your own citizens. The British learnt this in 1819 at the Peterloo massacre, where local militia and military groups were sent in to disperse a peaceful crowd and ended up killing lots of them. This is where we get the modern police force from. 16-year-olds who study history would know this quite well, and that it's not a good idea to send people who are trained to kill into a crowd of your own citizenry, if they're being peaceful. But for someone like Donald Trump, who's thick as shit, well, no, he decides to send them in and escalate the situation and really piss off everyone in LA to the point they start to riot. And Trump doesn't stop to reflect or think about this. No, he doubled down, calling for the Marines.
On California, are you prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act?
Depends on whether or not there's an insurrection.
There is, sir?
No, but you have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
Unless, of course, it's January 6th, in which case you get a pardon. But it doesn't end there. Have a listen to this.
It's a surreal sight. This Black Hawk moved in just in the last few minutes from the Border Patrol, landing at that Homeland Security office on the Paramount side, right next to the Home Depot, and they are unloading this huge helicopter with, just boxes and boxes, dozens of boxes of ammunitions, less lethal weaponry. You see these tanks with flammable labels on the side, one after another, an entire shipment, as if they were getting ready for some kind of a major battle. It really has to be said, this is a remarkable sight in the middle of a suburban street here where they are just unloading all of these weapons, carts full of boxes and flammable weaponry. So you can see that it just made its own parking spot there in the parking lot of that Homeland Security office on the other side of the river where all of this is taking place, and just a few blocks from that Home Depot and right across the freeway from where that car fire was just a few blocks away, and the protesters and Sheriff's Department had been squaring off. But this site here at the Homeland Security office of these federal officials unloading dozens of boxes of weapons and ammunition is just quite a sight to behold here. Something I really don't recall ever seeing.
This is frankly chilling, but also it seems to remind me of this weird little adage from the TV series Peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Steve, what's the situation like right now? We do understand the National Guard has now been put into place.
Yeah, National Guard is on the ground. Images are unmistakable. Of course, the armored vehicles, the sort of desert camo. You start to see them sort of set up in the area that we believe is kind of that federal complex downtown where a lot of the detentions for these sweeping ICE raids have been taking place.
Now, what did surprise me was that even though the governor hadn't requested these troops in, the police seem to think that actually they might be now necessary.
Do we need them? Well, looking at tonight, this thing has gotten out of control. Looking at the violence tonight, I think we got to make a reassessment.
Normally, it's the governor that calls in the militia, and we saw that in 1992 with the LA riots. The last time anything like this happened, where a president sent in troops without the permission of the governor, was in 1965, to protect Martin Luther King as he did a peace march.
California Governor Gavin Newsom posted on X saying the federal government is taking over the California National Guard, and that'll only escalate tensions. But can the federal government and the president take over a state's National Guard under Title 10? And what exactly, briefly, is Title 10?
Title 10 simply governs the status of National Guard troops. So when the president takes over the National Guard unit, he is elevating those troops from being state-level National Guard to being federally activated, and therefore the federal government pays them. They're under the command of the federal government. Now that's usually used for overseas deployment. If you're going to take troops from California and deploying them to the Middle East, for example, you'll do that under Title 10. He would have to raise up to using the Insurrection Act of 1807 as an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act of 1876 in order to use those federal troops in a law enforcement function. And that is something which is so rare in American history. And if we're saying that this is what's going to happen if you protest against the Trump administration, then truly we are losing our democratic values. That is what you will see in almost any autocratic country, the use of federal law enforcement against the local will in order to put down speech.
Trump says he's deploying 2,000 National Guardsmen to Los Angeles. I mean, how significant is this legally, and what federal laws or articles does Trump need to abide by to deploy the National Guard?
This is absolutely unprecedented nearly in American history. But under the Posse Comitatus Act of 1876, federal troops are banned from law enforcement functions inside of states. This is a result of the end of Reconstruction and the negotiations around the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, which resulted in the withdrawal of federal troops from the South after the Civil War.
Yes, that's right. You have to go back 165 years to the American Civil War to be legally allowed to use troops as a police force.
Keeping the peace is worth any price.
And this is the thing that gets me the most. Melania is an immigrant and has recently been given a US citizenship to Donald Trump, who also is the son of 2 immigrants. Trump's grandparents, Frederick and Elizabeth, they're from Germany. They were next door neighbors, and they ended up moving to the United States. Trump's mother was Scottish, and Melania's parents have just moved over and have been given American citizenship. Yet the core reason for all of this is Trump attacking migrants, immigrants, people he considers to be illegal. Yet in my opinion, the only people you can actually say are Americans and Native Americans are Native American tribes. America is built on migration and Trump is just slating it. But what really comes to mind is that actually this is a class thing. If you're rich, you can move to America, but if you're poor, you should stay away. Just have a listen to some of the stories from some of the people who were arrested.
Y'all told us to come here for opportunity. We came, and then now it's it's like, oh, you have to leave. But when I was the working class, y'all loved me, right? But now that we're too many people, what's the issue?
Bad people like criminals, and when they're not, when they're just trying to work hard for their own families.
This is not helping the city. It's actually damaging its wages, because there's a lot of taxes that are paid by undocumented people.
America is a country built on migration, and yet they're trying to clamp down on it. In fact, it's even weirder because a lot of the economy relies on these illegal migrants coming over the border and working on the farms in the cities, doing jobs that Americans don't want to do themselves. The situation is getting so out of hand, it was even caught on camera, police shooting a journalist.
With an Australian reporter struck by a rubber bullet.
And if you watch slowly and carefully, you'll see the police officer actually looking over to the journalist and taking aim. But no one in the Republican Party is talking about this. We even have breaking footage of a CNN reporter being arrested by police.
So here's what happened, Laura. The officer, I was called over, and the officer told me to put my hands behind my back. I said, am I being arrested? He said, you were being detained. I was walked out of the area.
What I will say is, this is spreading, and this is not good for Donald Trump. The economy's tanked, he's got an issue within the Republican Party and with Elon Musk, and now he's got riots spreading across America.
Now to that breaking news with more ICE protests happening in Lower Manhattan, this time after an 11th grader was taken into custody by ICE agents when he shows up to an asylum hearing. He's at least the second New York City public school student detained since the start of the Trump administration.
And in New York, similar protests outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan.
I'm hoping that, I guess, the entire policy changes. I'm hoping that the attitude towards the migrants changes.
You know, this all started with Donald Trump saying he was going after criminals. What I've heard today, that he went after kids, parents when they were attending their kids' graduations, people that were working in the fashion district, people that showed up, people who had asylum, received asylum, were going through the process, showed up to court like they've done over and over, and were taken to the basement and arrested. So right now they're doing more to spread fear, and they're not keeping everybody safe.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Everyone, please do me a big favor and leave a comment in the video. It really helps the channel grow. And if you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. I assume you did by getting this far. Otherwise, once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube subscribers. You keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link in the description. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.